Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Nurul Atira. Today I will explain about the semiconductor. A semiconductor chip is an electric circuit with many components such as transistor and wiring formed on semiconductor wafer. An electronic device comprising numerous these components is called integrated circuit IC. This one example of IC. On IC have a million transistors are formed on the surface of a silicon crystal wafer. How a semiconductor is created? Did you know the element called silicon, which can easily be found in sand, use silicon to make pin around wafer? A semiconductor is a crystal material whose ability to conduct electricity rises as its temperature goes up. This is, it sometimes acts as a conductor and sometimes as an insulator. Its conductive ability can be much increased by chemical treatment, which can serve control and memory function when installed in computer, microwave oven, DVD player, and cell phone. Last one is automobile. The advantage of the semiconductor is have a small size, the circuit involved them are so very compact. Moreover, can occupy less space and consume less power. Semiconductors also are cheaper and have a limited shelf life. Silicon device exhibit much lower leakage current and silicon diodes, which is a higher quality insulator. That's all. Okay, for the next slide, I will pass to Adam.
Hello, my name is Adam. We're going to talk about the processes in making an IC. Firstly, uh, according to Moore's law, the number of transistors in a dense IC doubles in approximately 2 years. This means in 2020, the number of transistors in an IC will become the value of mega, which is 10 to the power of 9, because of the advance in manufacturing processes. Next, we're gonna move to the front-end development. Front-end development basically is the PCB making process, but with more high-tech and complex processes involved. In front-end development, the wafer is being tested to know the functionality of the wafer. Next, back-end processes is the start of manufacturing processes. This include wafer mounting, wafer sewing, and washing with some QC processes. Wafer mounting is when the wafer is mounted on mylar strip and then the wafer is cut and washed of the debris from the silicon. During that processes, some QC process involved, like checking whether the chips have any defects or not. Thank you. I'm going to pass this to Miss Hadira.
Hi, I am Hadira and I am going to continue the processes of making a semiconductor. Now let's take a look at the process of molding. These are some of the pictures how semiconductor molds. The process of molding is used to encapsulate components in a plastic material to protect the ICs or the integrated circuits of a semiconductor. After molding, we now look at the process of plating. The picture explains how the plating principle works. Basically, manufacturer will plate semiconductors using a process called electroplating. It is also known as electrodeposition. This process deposits a thin layer of metal on the surface of a workpiece referred to as the substrate. The next step is called trim and form. Trim is a process of cutting off the dumb bars that short the LEDs together, while form is a process of forming the LEDs into the correct shape and position. All semiconductors must go through an electrical test. This electrical test is to ensure that all the electrical specifications are met before shipping out. The pictures shown here are the examples of tester and handler when doing an electrical testing of a semiconductor. Before ending the whole process, marking is required. Marking is the process of putting identification, traceability, and distinguishing marks on the package of an IC. Some examples that are marked on an IC are device name, company logo, date code, and a lot ID. There are two common marking processes, namely ink marking and laser marking. On the left here we have a laser marker. This is how it looks like and how it works. On the right hand side we have the finished product or finished marked process of an IC. Last but not least, the tape and reel process. This process is typically the final step in semiconductor packaging. This is a process of packing surface mount devices or SMD by loading them into individual pockets comprising of what is known as a pocket tape or a carrier tape. The units are sealed in the carrier tape with a cover tape, usually by heat or pressure. There are a few tests that needs to be done on the semiconductor. This test is called the final test. This test is a process of testing the packaged integrated circuit chips to specification. The purpose of this final test is to ensure that no device have been damaged during bonding and packaging. There are 4 tests mentioned in the seminar video. The first one is the open short test, the second one is the absolute test, the third one is the functionality test, and the fourth one is the quality assurance test. To conclude my part, I can say that we have all learned how semiconductor is being made. There are a few processes that need to be done and few tests and final tests that needs to be done. I can say that it requires a lot of precision in making semiconductor and it's very intricate.
From the video, we can see how the ICs and semiconductors are made by Micronas company. Micronas is a company of microchip production. For example, like ICs and semiconductor. Okay, I am Muhammad Shukri and I will continue the slide from the previous presenter. These are the processes for microchip production in Micronas. The production of the microchip or semiconductors undergo all of the processes by following the flow as shown in the figure. First, the production of the microchip or semiconductor start in the wafer lab using special equipment. In this lab, the microchip will undergo a wafer test process in which consists of 2 steps. The first one is circle parameter test, in which to ensure that the product is in best condition. The next one is defective IC test. For the defective ICs, they are marked with black dot. Okay, next is wafer mounting. The wafer is mounted to a plastic material called mylar. This mounting is to ensure that the dies will remain in position for the next further processes. Okay, the next process is dicing, also known as sawing. In this process, the wafer is cut into individual dies with saw blades. Okay, next, die bonding. In this process, two die is put on one lead frame. The first one is dice wafer, while the second one is memory chip. Okay, also in this process, the defective dies are left behind in the adhesive film. Okay, next, plasma cleaning. In this process, if there is any organic contamination on the circuit board, it is removed by the plasma cleaning machine. Wire bonding. In this process, the dies and lead frame are connected by gold wire using a fully automated bonding machine. Next, quality control. This process is to ensure best customer quality demands. Okay, following up with molding process. This is to protect the microchip from mechanical and water damage. Next one is to prevent the microchip from thermal expansion due to long period usage. Last but not least, the X-ray control. This is for quality purpose check. The check is to confirm the molding operation did not damage the gold wire connection. Okay, I will pass the presentation to Muhammad Faiz.
Hi, I'm Muhammad Faiz. In this part, it have a certain process like timber cutting, electroplating, trim and form. This is a process that need to follow and is a very important process to make sure the component will be made it perfectly and can pass the final test. If not, follow the specs that have been provided, the component will be eliminated and lastly will be scrapped. Before the component is ready to be sold, it will be a mark with the laser beam that contain the type date of the manufacturer and the batch. Lastly, in this process, also make sure all the soldered joints are supplied perfectly.